In a somewhat surprising move, the Philadelphia Flyers scratched Matvei Michkov against Tampa Bay, against the Lightning. And it's not something that I thought would never happen. In fact, I think we all knew that just based on the fact that John Tortorella is the head coach, we all kind of knew the day was going to come. Like we all kind of knew in our heart of hearts, there would come a day, there would come a time where Torts would bench Matvei Michkov, and we'd have to see how the kid responds, and that there would be a day that he would scratch Matvei Michkov, and Michkov wouldn't get to play at all. Thursday night was the latter. We had seen a few times in the course of Michkov's season, of his rookie year, that he has been sat at times, but Thursday night was the first time that he was left out of the lineup entirely. So John Tortorella was met by the media in Tampa and was asked about the decision to not play Matvei Michkov against the Lightning, who, by the way, they were going to be playing against a team that Nikita Kucherov happens to play for. And a lot of people were very excited about the possibility of seeing Michkov and Kucherov playing against one another, but they were deprived of that. Note that the Flyers didn't choose to scratch Michkov at home in front of the fans that are paying the money to see Matvei Michkov. But I want to go over to Torts' pregame availability and let the man explain to you why he decided to scratch Matvei Michkov, and then we'll talk about some of the reaction. Here's Torts pregame.
You answered any of these questions already, but I just see Matvei is out for tonight.
Yes.
What is it that he's not doing that you want to see him do?
Just part of the process.
Is it more a teaching thing?
Just part of the process. Yeah. I mean, I told you guys, with young guys, they can watch games too, as far as development. So it's trying to help them.
With Anthony.
Now, and that's where we're going to stop. So Torts, to his, we're going to have a weird moment here because I'm as critical of Torts as anybody. I have been as critical of Torts as anybody. He did tell you this was going to happen at some point. He didn't come out in the offseason and say, Matvei Michkov will sit for X number of games. He didn't say, Matvei Michkov is going to get scratched a bunch and you're just going to have to deal. Put up or shut up. It's fine. He did tell you that there were going to be learning experiences. He did tell you, and he has kind of shown through his actions in the past, that especially with young players, if they aren't doing something right, and he gives them multiple opportunities and they don't execute at a high level, they're going to watch a game from the press box. Now, do I totally agree with the decision to sit Matvei Michkov? No, not necessarily, because in fairness, the team as a whole hasn't played particularly well. Entering Thursday night, they had the fewest points in the National Hockey League. Now, they did pick up a big 2 in a shootout with the Iron Giant, Ivan Fedotov, in net. But in fairness, this Flyers team has been dreadful, okay? They have been bad in virtually all situations. The one place that Matvei Michkov has brought you consistent value has been on the power play. But as a 5-on-5 player, an even-strength player, Matvei Michkov looks like a 19-year-old who's adjusting to the NHL. He has not been infallible. He's been a very good player. He's a truly dynamic player. He doesn't necessarily have a lot of talent on this team that is able to read the game as quickly as him. He certainly has missed out on probably at least 4 points this season where he set up his line mates in an advantageous position, and if they could actually finish, he'd have a few more assists. I wasn't shocked that Torts scratched Matvei Michkov. I'm not going to call for Matvei Michkov or for John Tortorella's job based on this. But I am going to note that, it's certainly going to upset people because he's the only reason at this point that most Flyers fans are still watching, given the lack of success that the team has had this season. But I'm going to throw it to somebody who it certainly seems like has a lot of opinions about the Philadelphia Flyers. So I'm going to go over to the Drive Time show of the station that owns the rights to the Philadelphia Flyers, that airs their games, because you would think that if somebody's going to know what's going on, it has to be the person who hosts the Drive Time show, the afternoon drive show of the flagship station. So I'm going to go to Tyrone Johnson, who apparently thinks that this is a fireable offense. None of the other stuff to this point has been, but benching Michkov yesterday. This is before the game. This is when the news came out during the day that Michkov would be scratched. So I'm going to throw this over to Tyrone Johnson on what is certainly not the best show ever, but they do have the question mark at the end asking for our feedback. is it the best show ever? Here we go.
Flyers coach, they need to now get a new coach. I never thought Tortorella was the right coach for a rebuild. Then we find out today that they're going to bench Michkov to, quote, help him. No, that doesn't help him. Benching a 19-year-old who's still, according to the advanced metrics, your third best 5-on-5 player because he struggled 5-on-5 for a while. He'd have 6 more assists if he was playing with good teammates. You're the wrong coach for this situation, John. Respectfully, walk away. This is not a good position for you. You want to win every game. This is a developmental situation. Respectfully, walk away. You don't want to do the job that's required, which is developing a 19-year-old by letting him play. Aren't the Lightning really good?
Yes.
Typically are, yeah.
Can't you get really good playing against really good competition? Instead, he's on the bench. Thanks, John. Respectfully, walk away.
That's the flagship station. Okay, so let's dive into this one a little bit, because for people who don't watch hockey a lot, or for people who maybe didn't have something to talk about on a Thursday, it certainly stands to reason that it could maybe make a little bit of sense. Give a little bit of love, a little bit of attention to the Flyers. It's great. That's great. It's supposed to be a good relationship. It's actually kind of nice when the flagship station, actively talks about one of the teams that they own the rights to the games for. So, okay, let's break this down. John Tortorella is the wrong coach for a rebuild. Tyrone is correct, which I've been saying this entire time. I have been on the record, whether it was on this show, whether it was on Snow the Goalie, for the entirety of John Tortorella's tenure in Philadelphia. The only reason I was happy that John Tortorella got hired was because I knew it would lead to the firing of Chuck Fletcher. And the moment that happened, I was good. We were totally fine, because Tortorella has never been a rebuilding coach. Now, there are some that will argue that Tortorella has had some success in the past of developing some younger talent, okay? And there were moments last season where it looked like guys like Owen Tippett were taking a step forward. It looked like there were moments last season where Travis Sanheim or Cam York were taking a step forward. It looked like at some point Torts might be unlocking another level to Travis Konechny, who's not a young guy, but is certainly not like a mid-30s player. Okay. And then you look at this season and how it's gone. Now, Owen Tippett has looked better in the last 2 games, but Tippett has really struggled to start the year. Joel Farabee has been virtually non-existent through the first 11, at least through the first 11 games of the season, was practically non-existent. Morgan Frost has gone anywhere from looking like, maybe the best option to play as a dynamic, quote-unquote, line with Matvei Michkov, as much as he's looked like a guy who doesn't belong at the NHL level. So those are a few young guys that have not progressed. There's a case to be made that just overall, many of your younger players have at the very best plateaued and in a lot of ways have regressed. Now, like I said, Tippett the last couple of games has looked better. He's a streaky player. But until the Farabees and the Frosts of the world come back around, it's hard to look at this from a macro view and say John Tortorella has been directly responsible for the legitimate development of, let's say, 4 players on this team. Okay, so I will agree with Tyrone. He's not a rebuilding coach. It's not the best situation. I think the team should have moved on from him last year, especially given how the end of the season went. And I've litigated this many times on this show about how he handled the Sean Couturier benching last year. So I don't disagree. I think fundamentally that's right. Here's where the issue, though, okay? I don't know which 5-on-5 advanced metrics Tyrone was looking at. I genuinely don't. It's the beauty of advanced analytics, right? You can find an advanced stat that could make a player look much better than they are, and you can find an advanced stat that makes a player look much worse than they are. I have no idea what metric he's looking at, but in fairness, most of the Philadelphia Flyers team has not looked good at 5-on-5. They have not performed particularly well at 5-on-5. And even all that in mind, if you watch the games, you would still know that Matvei Michkov doesn't look comfortable at even strength. You would still know that by watching and understanding what's happening in the game, that Matvei Michkov doesn't look like a guy who's in his 5th or 6th NHL season. He looks like a 19-year-old who's still transitioning from the KHL. When they have the man advantage, he's about as lethal of an option as the Flyers have had probably since Giroux on the left circle. But Matvei Michkov has this move where he comes around the right circle, he gets himself central, and he kind of like whips a wrister low, and a lot of times it finds the back of the net, puts the biscuit in the basket, and everybody goes home happy on the Pico power play. But he's not a great 5-on-5 player. So again, I don't know what the model was. I don't know what model that was based on. I don't know what model those advanced analytics were, but Matvei Michkov has not been one of their 3 best 5-on-5 players this season. That's nonsensical. And I'll take it another step further, just because I can. The notion that a young player can't get better from taking a break and watching the game from the press box is not true, okay? There is a layer and a level to giving a guy one game to be removed, to see the system, to see everything unfold from the upper levels. Because if you don't know this, if you haven't gone to a hockey game before, or you've just never experienced what it's like to watch hockey from the balcony level, let's say, like where you can go find me, Ant, and Bundy for the Press Row show at every Flyers home game. If you've never watched hockey from up top, you can watch everything in the play developing. When you're down by the ice, like I was last night, thanks to my good friends over at Caesars Sportsbook, I was at the Rangers-Sabres game at MSG, and we were 2 rows off the ice. It was a great night. It was fantastic. I actually snuck a Flyers logo in the backdrop of these little kids in Rangers jerseys after they were like losing 6-1. And I put the Flyers logo on there, and the camera guy wasn't too thrilled, but that's kind of funny anyway. Got a picture on the ice at Madison Square Garden too, wearing the Snow the Goalie shirt. Good stuff. Anyway, if you watch the game from down low, you get a feel for how big the players are and how fast they are, but you can't watch everything unfold in front of you. When you're all the way up, you can see which guys are busting their ass on every play. You can see which guys are skating hard back to the bench. You can see which guys are lackadaisical. You can see who's lagging behind the play. In a lot of cases, you can see so much more about how the game is unfolding when an odd man rush is about to develop, when a goal is or a potential goal scoring opportunity is going the other way. You see the game from a different lens or through a different lens. So if you're a young player who's transitioning to a new league, who has had some success with the man advantage, who has been benched a few times because the 200-foot game isn't there, because there have been a few coaching points that they've tried to get through that for whatever reason aren't getting through, sitting for one game is not the end of the world. The reason that people are allowed to be worried, however, is that when John Tortorella historically has done this, it's not a one-game thing. It's a Morgan Frost going into the press box for a while. It's a Bobby Brink getting sat for a few games. There is a fair level of skepticism that this fan base has because of what Tortorella has done in the past. Now, look, we could also go with the Bobby Brink getting scratched in front of his home fans. Same thing with Sanheim. Like we could go that whole way if you really want, okay? There is nothing wrong with him missing one game. And I will say this. There is almost zero chance on this earth that John Tortorella is going to have the blessing. I mean, he gets to make the lineup. There's almost zero chance that John Tortorella is going to have the blessing of ownership or the front office to scratch Michkov in front of the Wells Fargo Center fans in the first, let's say 30 games of the season. Because the people who bought tickets, right? The people who bought tickets in the offseason, they bought them to come watch Matvei Michkov. They're not there to watch Tyson Forster. They're not there to watch Eric Johnson. They're not there to watch Rasmus Ristolainen. They're not there to see if Alexei Kolosov is going to be able to stay at this level, who, by the way, was hurt, so that's why Fedotov had to be in there. They're not there for that. They're there for Matvei Michkov. He's the guy. He is the star attraction. They're not going to let him sit, Matvei Michkov, in front of the home fans, at least not right now. So if you have to get the point across to the player, and if you're going to do it, doing it against Tampa makes sense on a few levels. One, give them the ability to watch from that 300-foot level or however the hell high press row is, right? The balcony level. You don't have to do it in front of your home fans. And in theory, Tampa's a really good team. You're probably going to lose that game. It just so happens that Ivan Fedotov played a really good game in net, and you won in a shootout. Hockey doesn't make sense, okay? It doesn't make sense all the time. But of all the things to get upset with Torts about, this one isn't it. At least not yet. Now, you will hear an entirely different tone out of me if we get like 3 games in a row of Michkov being scratched, or if it's every third game Michkov is scratched. Then you're going to have an actual problem. Like, then you're going to have the conversation about the coach, the front office, ownership. Are they all in lockstep or not? But one game, not worth getting too worked up about yet.